Hark and well met members of the YouTube Rune Platoon. My name is RuneMeisterKris, and welcome to the video. I just wanted to pop in really quickly before we get started to let you know my hair is going to look completely different in this video, because I recorded it last week. Over the weekend, I did a charity Dungeons & Dragons stream with a few other content creators, and I put as a $1,000 goal that I would give myself a haircut on stream. I'll keep it a buck. I did not think we were going to hit that mark. But here we are. We raised nearly $2,500 for Extra Life in the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia, which is pretty PogChamp. So if you're looking at this video going, what the heck? That is what happened. So I'll just leave it at that. Enjoy the video. I'm going to talk about the archaeology side of this channel. I predominantly do a lot of gaming content because, well, I like playing the games and everything. But I think today I also want to talk about the smart stuff. I'm not going to make it too long. I'm just going to go over the very basics of archaeology and what we got going on and the sort of stuff that I do. I thought it would be something interesting that people would enjoy mixing up the content. Before we get started, I just want to remind everybody to hit that subscribe button underneath the video. You'll get instant notifications to all of the awesome new content that we're uploading on this channel, both related to archaeology, gaming, and all things in between. Join the Rune Platoon. Enough pritter-pratter. Let's get down to it. So, what is archaeology? Is it digging up dinosaurs? Is it discovering ancient treasures? Maybe a bit, but not in the way you would imagine. Archaeology, by definition, is the study of human ancestry and past through studying the material culture, that is to say, objects, structures, items, books, things that were left behind by them. By looking into these objects, we, as archaeologists, can learn more about the time period that those people were living in, and how it differed and eventually evolved into ours today. The job itself is exciting, certainly. Maybe not as much as movies like to portray, or games, which is something that we explore on this channel. But ultimately, the profession itself is still important, because it looks at how we have changed over time. The mistakes we made in our past can be avoided in the future. And more importantly, we can get a better understanding of ourselves and how we have come to be the culture and the society and the level of advancement that we are. Archaeology as a subject goes back, as I said, through all of human history. We can go back millions of years ago to the very first stone tools developed 3 or so million years ago in Africa, all the way up to maybe 50 years ago, depending on your jurisdiction. The subject is massively expansive, and by no means do I claim to be an expert on all levels of archaeology and human history. That would be ridiculous. But what I do hope I can do is inspire you to go out and learn something for yourself. Figure out a culture, or a society, or a thing, an object, a subject, which you think would be super dope to learn more about, so that you can do it. The point is, the subject is all expansive, and I think that if more people knew about it, they'd be more interested in learning about it. So what isn't archaeology? Dinosaurs, number one. We don't do dinosaurs, that's paleontology. Sorry, I'm just going to get it out of the way right away because it's the number one question that comes up. Number two, looting. A lot of times, archaeology is confused for looting. That is to say, the practice of just scooping up artifacts, things that look super pretty and shiny, bringing them back home, selling them to a museum or a private collector. Unfortunately, this is pretty prevalent, and it's something that we as archaeologists kind of struggle to combat on a day-to-day basis. But as long as we can get our hands on some context for these artifacts, you should be in the wheelhouse of archaeology. So what do I mean by context? Context is probably the number one most important word to an archaeologist. If I had to pick one thing as a takeaway to archaeology, apart from the dinosaurs thing, because that goes without saying, I would say look for context. And what I mean by that is, context in an archaeological point of view is exploring an object's space, where it is in time and in the ground. So as we are excavating, let's say, just for a point of example, that we are looking up a sword. I just picked it randomly. A sword. We can learn a lot about the sword by looking at it, obviously. What it looks like, how it was made, any sort of styles or writings or things on the sword, around the sword, about the sword, right? Now, the context is where that sword sits in ground in time. Say we dig down and we find this sword in the same context as a number of medieval artifacts. Things that are very definitively from a certain period of time. That lets us know that this sword was interred during that time period. It cannot be newer than that time period, right? It must be from the medieval period, right? Not necessarily. And that's where you start looking into the more details of the sword itself, because it just means that the latest in time that it could be is the medieval period. Again, this assumes that the sword was not buried deeper in than where it was supposed to be, but the context can help us with that as well, because we'd be able to see that the earth was churned up and not consistent throughout the entire layer. Looking at the other objects in the area can help us relate where this one particular object lies in time. Similarly, this sword could help us relate where all of the other objects sit. Say this sword is definitively Viking, just because I'm going to stay on brand. Definitively Viking, but it lies in Britain, in England, just as an example. One might think, oh, well, it's a sword that ended up in some English guy's house. He took it off a Viking when he died, and he kept it in his house. And when he died, and the house fell in, the sword stayed there too. That's possible, and that's where we come into context. Are the rest of the artifacts in the house related to medieval Britain? Or are they artifacts that we know would be in the homestead of a medieval Viking home? Did Vikings settle in Britain, bring the sword, and the whole thing collapsed within there? Or did a Briton collect the sword, bring it home, and have it interred with all of his personal stuff? That's what context tells us. And that's why it's so important to archaeology. It is the huge, big difference between what we've got in our heads before we come into the story, and what we have in our heads as we come out of it. If you just take the sword out of context and bring it in, someone can look at it and say, yeah, this is a Viking sword. And you're like, cool, yeah, I got a Viking sword. But what does it tell you? Not really anything. Yeah, you have a Viking sword, but you don't know the story. You don't know where it came from, where it's been, what it's done, who had it. There's so many things that you can learn from a single object in archaeology, as long as you have the context. So, if any of you out there are amateur historians, amateur archaeologists, my advice to you is to look into the context of the object. Don't just look at the surface, at what you see. Look at what you see around it, and what that might tell you about what you're looking at. I'm not a philosopher, but I would say that is pretty good life advice in general. In any case, guys, I don't want to ramble too much. I just wanted to keep it nice and simple. So there's your first lesson in archaeology, the benefits of context. So guys, that's it for today. I'm just going to keep it nice and simple, not try and muddy it up too much with what we've got going on. Archaeology 101. So if you liked this video, if you liked the sort of stuff that I'm doing, if you think that you'd like to see more archaeology-related videos, more quick lessons, 101s, 102s, etc., stuff like that, let me know in the comments. Right now, my time is so scattered all over the place. I'm trying to figure out what sort of content I want to do. If you guys would love to see more of this content, let me know. I'll prepare stuff. I'll do lectures. You can't get a job as a teacher in archaeology in America anyway, so you might as well get some free lessons here. And thank you guys very much. Don't forget, I stream on Twitch every Thursday, Friday, and Saturday at 8 p.m. Eastern, and I occasionally throw in some extra streams over the weekend if I'm feeling spicy. So come check me out there. If you have any more archaeological questions, you can ask me live on stream, and I'm more than happy to answer them, or leave it in the comments, or join our Discord, or any number of other things. Look me up on social medias. Ask me questions. Maybe I'll put it in a video. Thanks, guys, very much. We'll see you next time. Gott note.